Hello, and in this part 2 video I'm going to talk about a useful skill that you learned in a maths class, and in it you should say what the skill was, how you learnt it, who taught you it, and explain why you think it was useful for you. If I remember rightly, one of the first things we learnt in maths was mental arithmetic. This basically means doing maths calculations in your head. Obviously, the first time we were shown how to do this, we used fingers to carry out these sums. However, this led on to doing calculations such as 37 plus 45 in your head, without the need for a calculator. Initially, I found such sums quite tricky and they would take a long time. But through hard work and perseverance, I became much more adept at doing these. At first I used to think, why do we need to do these complex calculations in our head when we could use a calculator instead? When I got my first job in my teens, the value of this skill became apparent. When I was still studying in high school, I got a part-time job in a cafe. And as well as serving customers, I had to add up their bills as there was only one cash register, and it was easier to do it by hand. Often the customer was standing or sitting in front of me and waiting for me to calculate the bill, and I needed to do it ASAP. Having this skill of being able to mentally add large numbers in my head made life so much easier. Although it was my first teacher, whose name escapes me at the moment, who taught me how to do this, the hours of practice I had whilst working in the cafe really made me quite proficient at this skill. Now, firstly, I'll say I found this topic incredibly difficult. As I've said in lots of topics recently, the topics that they're choosing for IELTS speaking are becoming so specific. Instead of just describe something you were good at school, a math skill you learnt in school. So it's very specific, and your 1 minute is often spent thinking of a skill that you learnt. And so that's why I hope you find this course useful, because I'm giving you some ideas of what to use before you take the test. The second thing I'd like to point out is that I use the word maths. Now, I am from the United Kingdom, I speak British English, and we use the plural maths. In America, they use math. Now, you can choose to use either of these, and as long as you're consistent in your use, that means you use the same one over and over again, then the IELTS examiner will not mark you down for it. Okay, let's have a look at some of the vocabulary. So here's a phrase I've used in some other videos, and I do like to repeat some phrases in videos to try and really get you to use them, to remind you of them, because it's okay watching it once and thinking, yeah, that's good, but do you actually remember? Do they go into your long-term memory and you actually use them? So if I remember rightly, great for talking about parties, trips, holidays, something you've done. Don't be specific about dates and times or things. So if I remember rightly is a very good way of expressing it and will impress the IELTS examiner. Mental arithmetic. This is basically adding things up in your head. And another way of saying a sum is a calculation. And you carry out, it's another way of saying to do these calculations, to do these sums. Some good grammar here. It led on to something else. If you're following led on to with a verb, we follow it with an ing verb. Initially, very useful word for IELTS writing task 1. In general, you might use it in a letter, a more formal letter. Also good for IELTS writing task 2 and good for speaking as well. And it means first of all. Perseverance, great for task 1 general if you're writing a job application letter, good for task 2 as well, and it just means the ability to stick at something until you achieve it. Adept. This is an adjective, quite a complex one, and it means good at doing it, or much better at doing it. Remember not to say when I was 13. Use phrases like in my teens, in my 20s, in my 30s. And apparent means obvious or clear. Here's another one I like to get into every part two I do, if possible, to remind you to get some complex grammar. When I was studying in high school, try and get something like that. When I was living in X, when I was studying in high school, to use some past continuous. To add up their bills, the bill is what we ask for when we want to pay. In America, they use the word check. And to do it by hand means to do it in my head or to do it on a piece of paper. ASAP, very useful, can be in an informal letter for IELTS Writing Task 1 General, and it means as soon as possible. And we tend to say ASAP when we're speaking it, as soon as possible. This, I do know the name of the teacher who taught me. I just wanted to use some complex language and show off if I was doing the IELTS exam. So if something escapes you, it means you can't remember it. So his name escapes me at the moment. And proficient means good at, sort of very skilled at something. So like I said, quite a tricky topic. Keywords to remember: calculations, sums, calculator, mental arithmetic, to add up, to calculate, to do it in your head. All of these are very useful for this topic, but I sincerely hope you don't get this topic in the exam because it is such a tricky one. Thanks for watching.